Hi, ladies, Lisa and Kelly. I hope that you guys are having a fantastic morning so far. I'm really excited to continue our discussion. So, if you didn't check out last week's episode, go back and take a listen. You won't hear much from me in that episode. I feel like I was just absorbing, and it was just such a good episode. It was all about release and surrender and how that allows you to truly live. Like you need to have a release in order to grow. And I found myself thinking about when Lisa was talking about how I often try to hold on to the steering wheel too tight, to keep control of situations that I don't need to take control of. And I was reflecting on all of this as Lisa was talking. And during that episode, I actually chatted Lisa on the side and I was like, we need to do a part two because there's so much here. And I feel like it hit me, but I know that it definitely resonated with a lot of others as well. So I wanted just to continue the conversation about how beneficial releasing and allowing feelings to be felt can be for someone and how that can really allow you to grow. So I want to, Lisa actually brought up a couple of points, right before we started recording that I really want her to just jump right into. Because again, as she was even, talking right before we hit record, I was getting the feels. I feel like Lisa has a really great way of breaking things down and explaining it so eloquently, and I want her to jump into jump into some of these parallels in nature and how it really just proves that in order to continue to grow, you need to just allow certain releases. So, Lisa, you want to take it over? You're on mute, Lisa.
You have set me up, girl. I don't know.
I always do. Lisa, I always
Oh my
just like I throw you under the
girl.
bus sometimes. I'll
Oh,
like,
that's
throw a
yeah,
question your way or, so this is
right. Keep me
similar. I'm
on
just
my toes. I love it. So I have been in the same l- journey of learning how to release, how to surrender, and how to truly rest. I don't think as a culture we know how to rest, how to really trust the process and release control. And I was thinking about I love nature. I mean, I love taking hikes. I love being in nature, and I think we can learn so much from how things happen in nature. And so I was thinking about crying, and that's a form of release. And I know that you might be thinking, "Oh, well, crying is a sign of weakness, or I got to hold it together for my kids, or I don't want to have a pity party for myself to cry." And okay, those are valid thoughts. But let's take a look at them, because the way we were created, the way God created us is to have emotions, right? And I think we have decided which emotions are legal or permitted and which ones are not, right? We have kind of judged our emotions as these are the ones that are good and these are the ones that are bad. But all emotions are human. It's how we were made. And so to judge our emotions, or to say that being sad is bad, or crying is a negative thing, and maybe that's not even your struggle, but I think for me it has been something that I've struggled with. And when I think about crying, it's actually a release. It is a release. I haven't done the research, but I'm curious to know of the chemicals, the toxins, right? When we release sweat out of our pores, it's toxins. When we release tears, I am convinced that there are things that we release um, in our emotions, in our cells through our tears. And the analogy that I saw in nature was clouds. So if clouds never released the heaviness, picture a cloud literally just full of moisture. Like it's so heavy that it's just like barely hanging on. And the pressure in that cloud to hold on to all of that moisture, it's too much. And so, what does the cloud do? It releases, it surrenders the water, and there is a beautiful thing about it because if that cloud held onto all of that rain and never released, we would never have green grass. We would never have new growth. We would we would never have rivers and oceans and all the cycle of nature, and life itself would be thwarted. And so I just think it's so beautiful when God gives us these examples that we can see with our own eyes. Like this happens all the time, right? We have rain. We've had a ton of rain here in Wisconsin. We've got areas that are flooding, and but it's purposeful. It's purposeful. And in the same way, when we allow, we don't have to sit and cry for days. That's not what I'm saying, right? We need to pull pull our support system in, talk about it, journal, process it with a friend, all of that. But if we just buck up and suppress our emotions and don't allow ourselves to feel, it's like those clouds. It's a heaviness that we carry, but it's our choice and we can release it. So I don't know if anyone's ever given you permission to cry before, but Sarah, like last week, I felt like, you were wanting to cry, and you did shed a few tears, but it was almost like you were battling with yourself because you were like, well, I got to hold it together. We're recording, and I need to, get my to-do list done and stay together because my boys need me and all the things. And and it's such a beautiful thing to just give yourself permission to release and surrender and let go.
And I appreciate both of you so much for allowing me to do that after the recording last week. And you're right, I did. I You put on a strong face. You put on a strong face because that is what society expects. That is what the pressure we put on ourselves. And even though some of these emotions creep up, we try to suppress them just because that is the norm. That is what is expected. Um, Having that safe space, having that community, having you ladies for me to just, once we, stopped the recording last week and we got to talk through it, I was able to have that release. And the days that followed were much easier. It ebbs and flows, so some of these emotions are coming back up. I need to put pen to paper again. But one thing that, as you were talking, Lisa, one thing that I happened to read this morning, a recommendation from our own Kelly. It's the Jenna Kutcher book, right? How Are You Really? And in that book, I randomly opened up to a page that I already had read, and one of the first sentences was something I don't have the book in front of me, so this might not be exact, but it was, while emotions aren't based on, Kelly has the book right next to her. While emotions aren't always based on truth, they 100% matter. And I feel like we kind of discount that in today's society, and we don't allow ourselves to release because we just think that that's not right. Even growing up, and these are such innocent comments that are made as a child. And sometimes I say it to my kids too, and I'm more aware. So I try to adjust, but it's like, be strong, like pick yourself back up, like, shake it off, or things like that we say that are really not allowing our kids to have those feelings. And in some cases, it's like, I don't know. I don't know. It's a fine line in terms of like how to address certain situations that come up. But because of the emotions that I've been, dealing with in the last several weeks, especially, like I feel like I'm just more aware of like how I'm speaking about different emotions to my kids because I don't want them to feel like they can't express themselves. Having all of this stuff inside is not serving me or anyone around me. So it's time for a release. And sometimes my kids feel that too. And because their brains aren't fully developed, it's even an entirely different ball game for them in terms of how they are trying to manage their emotions, because it's even harder for them to manage. Like when you say manage emotions, what does that even mean? It's like suppressing your emotions, like holding it together for the comfort of those around you. Like why? You know?
I know it's so important to really like check in with yourself and how are you feeling? Because you're saying like it's such a fine line, for us, and then also, in helping our kids grow and learn. But it really is just like I feel Sarah taking that time to realize this doesn't feel right. Something's off. I'm feeling heavy. This it needs to release. And at least I love the analogy with the clouds because it's so true. It's just that cycle that needs to happen. Like, yeah, there could be flooding when it rains too much, or, bigger storms come from rain too, with hail and tornadoes and all the things. But that's honestly the cycle of our life too, right? Like we have this spring and the trees are budding and the tulips are, blooming as well. And then there's the times where you're really just in the rut, and that is the tornado. That is the flooding where it's just like you feel like it's chaos and it's hard to get a grip on it, and you feel like you are literally spinning like a tornado and can't grab onto something that you feel is secure and that you know and love and trust, and that plays a huge part in your emotions and how you live on a daily basis. But I just feel like checking in, taking that time to really, why do I feel like this? Why am I allowing it to affect me in this way? Is it serving me? What do I need to do to, flip the switch a little bit? And how will I feel better if I do X, Y, and Z instead? Do I need to take a walk? Do I need to start journaling? Take a yoga class? Spend more time with my kids if that's where you feel like I'm just spinning as a mom and I'm not accomplishing anything. Well, who cares if dinner tonight is chicken nuggets again? But if you plan a game night with your kids for 30 minutes, whatever is going to fill your soul, you have to check in. You have to pause and really have that release. And it's okay because we can't do everything all the time, mamas. It's just not going to happen, even though we want to be superwoman. And it's okay. And I feel like it's okay to talk to our kids about that too. Like if you have a bad day, if you didn't handle a situation, it is just being honest. Like I think, Sarah, when you said something about talking to the boys, I'm like, buck up and just get back up and it's fine. Don't. I did that last night with Jace at football, and he got hurt and kiddo stepped on him with his cleats. And I was like, you're fine, get back up. And, but then later I talked to him and made sure it was okay, see how the situation was, let him release what really made him frustrated about the play and what happened at practice, because I don't want him to build up this hostility towards the other player on his team because they're teammates. Because it was hard for him. I think it was more of an emotional, they've been kind of battling it through. And then this kid finally ended up accidentally stepping on his leg with his cleats. And I didn't want it to escalate into something bigger. So it's okay in the moment to buck up and get over it and move on. You're fine. But then really check in with yourself, check in with your kiddos,
And I think
and
that's what I did last week with you ladies too. Is like, yeah, we were
right.
recording.
Exactly.
I didn't add to the conversation as much as maybe I normally would. But then I did have that period after where I was able to connect with you. And I think you're spot on, Kelly, because I don't want to say like, you're not always going to say the right things to your kids. You're human. And but sometimes you do need to just get through the situation at hand and put a strong face on to get through it. And then just have that person or have your mom or have you ladies to help you process what happened or process what's inside and what's going on. And I think that's like the most important piece of all of this, right? Is just allowing the release to happen, you know, even if it's a scheduled release, like
For
with you guys.
sure.
Yeah, it's
For
important
sure.
to allow it.
And not to let
Yeah.
it build up, because then it
Yeah.
is. It's like that cloud that's just under
The
this so
pressure.
much pressure. And then you're going to do and say and feel things that you never thought you would. And it's just, you need to release it right then and there. Check in with yourself. Right, Lisa?
It's so true. And I just think about journaling, because journaling is so stinking powerful. And sometimes I battle with myself, like, oh, I don't want to write about all this negative stuff. Like, I just don't want to put it on paper. But when I push through and allow myself to be gut honest with how I'm feeling, all of the ick, and I get it out, because here's the real truth. The ick is going to be there. Either it's going to be in your head, going around and round, and building. Anything that stays in our head, negative or positive, it starts to grow, right? And so if we got the ick in our thoughts and we're just spinning, 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 they're not going anywhere, but they're getting bigger. It's like your fears that they just like kind of grow, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, but what if this happens? And what about this?" And it just like totally grows and almost becomes exaggerated in our heads as we let it spin in there. But the minute we take it from our head to the paper, it's out of our head and it's on the paper. And there is something amazingly powerful in getting it out of our head and literally seeing it move from my head to my paper, and seeing that it's there on my paper and knowing that it's out of my head because I've released it, is so life-giving. Because I may start out journaling and like tears are falling on my page, and I am being, no one needs to see my journal, so I can be the honest that I've ever been, right? Like just let it all out, the good, the bad, the ugly, the things that, if someone knew you were thinking those thoughts, you would be embarrassed or ashamed or whatever. All go on the paper. And then what I find in the course of that journal exercise is once that release happens and it's out of my head onto the paper, it's almost as if through that release, my my awareness increases, and it's like this evolution that happens in my thinking to where, the truth comes to the surface. Well, that really isn't what what's happening, or I don't know this for sure. And y- I find myself, you know, really through that release process coming to a place of truth, coming to a place of like, okay, this is what I know. This is what I know to be true. This is what may not be true. And this is what I have control over. And most of what I have control over is right here between my ears, right? It's my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions. And I think that's the power of journaling.
And that kind of reminds me, Lisa, of that movie you just mentioned to us earlier, the Hallmark movie that you watched about them releasing butterflies. And your emotions kind of feel like that, where it's this caterpillar looking for change. He knows the next, season of life is coming, and creates that cocoon or chrysalis, depending on which science, whatever. I don't remember which one it's called. It's one or the other. But then, you have to stay there for a little while too, right? Like change and growth takes a minute, but you know that it's necessary to be in that cocoon. But then when it is time for you to really release and surrender the next version of yourself and who you were always meant to be. I think that's just the most beautiful picture that you can have in your head. And that's also a process of nature that has to happen, is that cocoon. And then this amazing, gorgeous butterfly emerges. And that's you. That's us. That's just how we should be, and not be stuck in here because you think you're trapped. This is all life is. This is as good as it's going to get. The woe is me. That's not it. There's so much more out there for you to be. And I think I love, Lisa, how you bring the nature in to this conversation, because I love it too. It's how I live, breathe, everything. I have to be outside. I love this whole butterfly analogy too, because you can be this bright blue, just full of energy butterfly, ready to show the world who you really are and who you're meant to be. I love, I love it
So good.
so much.
It's so good. And in the movie, like, it was this side gig, basically this business where they would release butterflies. And so they would bring, the cage, the mesh cage of the butterflies. And my thought was, what if they just kept them in there? Like, what if they never released them? Like, what if they were just stuck there? And then I thought, how many of us feel like we're stuck? We're stuck inside that mesh, trapped co- cocoon, cage, whatever. And all we need is to release ourself, release the burdens, release the control, release the outcome and the results. When we release all of that, that's when true living happens. That's when we discover our wings. That's when we discover that, oh my gosh, we can fly to new heights, because we have put ourselves in a place that we have released the things that are holding us back. So I love this discussion. I think this is something that we should check in with our listeners on a regular basis, because I really think this is central to growth. I think it's central to um, really being all that we were created to be, is that awareness around, what am I holding on to that's not serving me? What am I holding on to that's not mine to hold on to? Those are the two questions I think we can ask ourselves. What am I holding on to that's not serving me? And what am I holding on to that's not mine to hold on to? And that's where I would suggest, and we would suggest, journal. Start there. At the top of the page, that's your journal prompt. What am I holding on to that's not serving me? And what am I holding on to that's not mine to hold on to? And I think it's going to be such a beautiful discovery that you learn about yourself, and you're going to feel lighter. You're going to feel more in alignment with how you were made to be. It's such a beautiful thing. So we are excited to join and connect with you. You can connect with us many different ways. Obviously, you can reach out to us on our Instagram accounts, on our Wake Up and Dream account, but you can also join our Facebook group. We love our members, and we're going deeper. We're giving you resources, we're having discussions. We want you to be a part of our community, so check it out in the show notes. And we will put the reference to the book that we referenced today, How Are You Really? Because this would be a great book to dig in, to go, how am I feeling really, right? What am I pushing down that needs to be released. So we're thankful for you, our listeners, and we hope that you join us every single week to dive in, to wake up to your true potential and start dreaming of all that there is waiting for you. Until next time, wake up and dream.